All right, we've been watching our affiliate there in Kansas City, KCTV, covering this still unfolding breaking news event in which a shooting took place after the Kansas City Chiefs wrapped their Super Bowl celebration. At this early stage, all we know from officials, as you've been listening, is that two armed people were taken into custody, but Lana, several people were injured, multiple people struck, and that seemed to have triggered panic and chaos there in Kansas City and what was meant to be a celebration. Absolutely.
Some of the images that we saw were people huddled together. We saw many people being removed by paramedics on golf carts, on gurneys. We do not know the extent of injuries. There are very few details that have in fact been confirmed, but we do know from the Kansas City Police Department that two armed people have been detained for additional investigation. We do not know if that is the full extent of the people who were behind this. It is still an active scene. We know that there were injuries. The Associated Press reporting between 8 to 10 injuries. We do not know if those are gunshot wounds. We do not know if those were people who were injured in the ensuing chaos. We know that police have asked people to move outside of this area. We are still assessing the damage. We are still assessing what the motivations may have been for those shootings. So we are trying to separate what we do know for you from what we are hearing. And of course, in a big event like this, where there are thousands of people assembled in a scene of jubilation, there's a lot of people who are talking now. And so we're going to try and make sure that we keep what are rumors and innuendo separate from the cold, hard facts as we know that. So
that's right. What's clear, too, though, and all of this taking place in just the past hour or so, is that what was meant to be a huge celebration, I think last year, some 1 million people showed up in Kansas City to be a part of this. It was all through the city. It was through the most densely populated areas. And a lot of parents had their kids there to see Mahomes and all the other athletes as part of this celebration. And we saw some footage of what looked like a mother bracing her son, or at least someone she knows, and being emotional. So we know that something has gone incredibly wrong, and so many people are frightened and afraid who are trying to celebrate today. I think we do have Keith Taylor with us to speak about kind of the bigger picture. Keith is a former assistant commissioner for the New York City Department of Correction and a former NYPD sergeant. Keith, we heard local reporters say that the FBI and ATF are on the scene. What would have been the footprint before anything went sideways in an event of this size?
Thank you for inviting me. And my heart goes to those victims and their family members. And I'm proud of the response of the first responders that were assigned to this event and responded appropriately and helped to save lives. Now, the planning that goes into this incident of national significance, a Super Bowl celebration, is quite significant. And so you have the federal partners, FBI, others, you have the state and local agencies all working together with significant plans, looking at what can happen, what will happen with the resources that are dedicated to it if such an incident occurs. And there are lots of different things going to occur when you have large groups of people. So no doubt the injuries could have been more significant, could have been a worse tragedy, if not for the first responders that were assigned to this event. So they go through their planning process, making certain that there is a high-level coordination between different state, federal, and local resources so that the response will be a coordinated one and will allow for them to quickly address the situation. And it sounds like they will, of course, do a after-action review to see what policies or procedures could perhaps be augmented or changed to minimize the likelihood of this type of thing happening.
Yeah, and Keith, obviously, given that we do not know the extent of those injuries, how many people were injured in the actual shooting, we don't want to speculate on how the police did their work yet until we have some more details about that. But I'm hoping, given your experience, that you could talk to us about the type of police presence that would have been in the area, because we heard from our local station, KCTV5, that there was a massive police presence just because of the sheer number of people that were there.
Yes, apparently 900 officers assigned to it, probably multiple jurisdictions participating in this event, as well as state police and the federal assets that were there. You would have SWAT teams, you would have WMD hazmat response teams, you would have a number of specialized units that would be able to provide immediate response to different types of threats. So it's unfortunately, we've had this is the 48th mass shooting for the year, and so it's something that city leaders and law enforcement professionals and first responders take quite seriously in terms of preparing for an unfortunate incident such as this.
And we just want to update our viewers who might be joining us now on what exactly this breaking news event is. Moments after the Kansas City Chiefs, we understand, wrapped their Super Bowl celebration in Kansas City. Police report that shots were fired nearby in apparently a parking garage, and that created what seemed to be just mass chaos among the thousands of people there. They took 2 people into custody who the police say were armed, but many other people they say were injured. Some people struck, and they're now trying to set up local police a child reunification area, suggesting that maybe some children have been separated from their parents in all of this panic.
Well, we certainly saw that there were children in the audience as we have been following the parade as a celebration earlier today, and seeing that confetti Errol that was still falling after people were huddled there crying together. It's really heartbreaking. We want to bring in now Kathy Guider, if we can. She's a retired FBI special agent. She's also the vice president of operations with the private investigation and security consulting firm Veracity IIR. Kathy, do we have you?
Yes, ma'am.
So, Kathy, we understand from our local station, KCTV5, that they saw FBI agents on the scene already. How would the FBI's involvement change the nature of this investigation? What are they doing now?
The FBI is going to work hand in hand with the Kansas City Police Department, the other agencies, local, state, and federal, to pool all their resources and gather as much information as they can from all their various sources to put that information together and come up with an idea of who was involved and what the motives and things of that nature. So they're all going to be working together.
So at this moment, Kathy, I mean, all of this just breaking in the past hour or so, how can police get their hands on all the evidence and all the witness statements? If we're checking the feed from the local police department, they're asking people who were witnesses to this to head to the southwest corner of Pershing and Main. They now have a child reunification location inside Union Station. And just the panic of whether they were gunshots or bangs being heard can really make people, run and maybe lose sight of who they're with. How do they even begin untangling all of this in a densely populated area of downtown Kansas City? And we're just watching footage of someone appearing to give someone a CPR. I mean, it's all quite jarring to see. How do they get through this and clear things up?
It's going to take some time. Immediately right now, they're trying to get as many witnesses as possible, to get as many statements as possible. They're also going to be utilizing other assets that are in the area. Kansas City already has, I'm sure, a large network of cameras in their downtown area due to the number of events that they have, with Super Bowl parades, with the draft last year. So I'm sure that there are analysts and people who are, obtaining those camera feeds from downtown and working through those feeds to see, what they can find, what evidence is there of people moving throughout the crowds. And once again, trying to get as many people to come forth with information that they can get interviews and get as much detail as they can obtain.
Kathy, I have to imagine that the FBI is trying to prevent things like this from occurring, not just with the police presence, the law enforcement presence, but also trying to monitor chatter, et cetera, in advance of this. How difficult is it to try and keep events like this safe?
You know, it's very difficult because for all the resources, all the time, all the assets that you can put in place, there are people out there who are just bent on doing something nefarious and, trying their best to beat the system, in evil ways. So, right, there are people that do nothing, but their jobs are to monitor social media, to monitor, all the various resources that are out there to see what's being said, what's being talked about in groups. There's people that, prior to this, as soon as the Chiefs won, their work went in to gathering intelligence and information as to, the planning of this parade and what the talk has been out there. So people have been working on this behind the scenes, and they will continue now that they have, the critical incident that just happened.
It's a good point you make. It's one of those moments when you realize that the news may have been much worse if it were not for such a strong police presence there in Kansas City. Kathy, stand by for us if you can. We also want to bring in Sam Vinograd. He's a CBS News contributor, and she is a former Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism Threat Prevention and Law Enforcement Policy for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Sam, can you talk to us about what your views are on this unfolding situation and what's jumping out to you at this point?
Certainly. Unfortunately, as we know, parades are highly vulnerable events when it comes to potential shootings. We had an unfortunate incident in Highland Park, Illinois in the past. And because parades are so mass density, there are just so many people in one place, they are always vulnerable targets, and that's exactly why there's a series of preparations that go into play. The Super Bowl itself was a National Special Security Event, or NSSE, which it had law enforcement professionals from various jurisdictions involved in planning. But despite the best efforts to protect the Super Bowl and now the parade, because there are just so many people involved, it is hard to have 100% confidence in security. Now, right now, having worked on the response to Highland Park and other mass casualty events, I can tell you the immediate focus is multi-layered. In the first instance, authorities are working to mitigate any loss of life and any medical issues that may have arisen either from the actual shootings themselves or people trying to flee. Anytime you have individuals trying to flee an event, there's risk of additional damage, whether from crowd control reasons or heart attacks or otherwise. There's always that concern. Further, family reunification is top of mind, and authorities have set up a family reunification center as far as we know. We understand, or we believe we understand, that subjects have been taken into custody. What we don't know right now is whether those subjects acted alone. This could have been some sort of fight that broke out between individuals and weapons were drawn, or there could be some other motivation here. So while the subjects are being interviewed, there are immediate efforts to ensure that, again, no other injuries are sustained, there's no additional loss of life, families are reunified, and to mitigate any additional damage.
And the White House, we should note, is closely monitoring the situation there. But Sam, we don't know anything about the motivation, as you say, and I'm struck by your comments about parades are these vulnerable events, in part because of the mass density. What we understand happened were that the celebration concluded, people were starting to leave, and then at that point is when the gunfire rang out. How would have things been different potentially if this had happened during the event? And is there a concern that after the event wrapped, the security became a little bit more lax, or are they really on high alert until every last person is cleared out of there?
Security officials are on heightened alert until the event itself has ended and until individuals have dispersed and have left the scene. We don't know the particulars here. We don't know if individuals had guns the whole time that they were present on scene, and if the shooting broke out at the end for, again, it could have been a personal reason. So without trying to hypothesize on what the motivation was here, we do have to keep in mind that any time there is mass density of people in one place, an incident is vulnerable. Again, in Highland Park, Illinois, on an Independence Day parade, an individual engaged in an act of targeted violence and terrorism because there were a lot of people gathered, and it was an easier way to inflict damage. In this case, when more individuals are gathered, there's more opportunity, unfortunately, for more casualties and more fatalities just based upon the population density. But security officials do not stop their work until individuals have cleared the scene. First responders were still present, thank goodness, to try to mitigate any loss of life. And the cooperation between all levels of government, federal, state, local, is ongoing, as we're hearing. I believe we heard that the ATF is on scene in addition to local law enforcement, and they will be cooperating on the investigation. Now, if there is the potential that this was an act of targeted violence and terrorism, we'll see different part of the federal enterprise get involved. But in my experience, having worked these issues at the federal level, the federal government is briefed in full as a situation is developed, not only to stay up to date on the information, but also to offer any support that may be needed to the community that's impacted, both right now in this moment and as families are dealing with injured loved ones and potentially fatalities as well.
Sam Vinograd is speaking to us from our Washington bureau. We're all watching footage from earlier in Kansas City, Missouri, as police were trying to attend to people that appeared to be injured after shots were fired in a parking garage there. And Sam, we appreciate you kind of pulling back the veil a bit and giving us a sense of how the different law enforcement entities communicate with each other at a moment like this. All of that happening in real time. I also want to bring back in Keith Taylor, because as we don't know if this was connected to terrorism or what the motivation was from the people who fired those shots, but we're all watching this, Keith, and wondering, geez, is there any mass event with lots of people that we can go to where there isn't this risk?
Yeah.
What's the type of news people can use at home if they do attend a big event, but in the back of their mind, they wonder what happens if everybody panics?
Well, local authorities are usually they're absolutely in touch with their federal counterparts who are going to provide them any information, any intelligence about concerns, verifiable concerns about any threats to the event that's taking place. So while this may have some sort of domestic or foreign terrorism connection, it may be more likely that it was perhaps a dispute between two individuals resulting in gunfire. But the investigation will find out exactly what the cause was of this incident, and that information will be shared with the general public. It's always a concern when there are large gatherings of people. The United States has many celebrations of national significance, and so these are the types of things that police departments and other first responders prepare for and train for on a regular basis.
All right, Keith Taylor, thank you. We want to bring in now Jacob Michael. He's on the phone. He was there and witnessed the shooting at the parade. He's also a journalist for News Press now. Michael, Jacob, tell us what you witnessed.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. From my vantage point, myself nor my colleague actually saw what had happened as far as the shooting goes. What we did see was people start to run away from the scene, which happened near the intersection of what looks to be Pershing and Kessler Road here in downtown Kansas City. People started to run away from that scene towards Union Station. And then as minutes started to pass, people were starting to run out of Union Station. And that's when you started to see armed military personnel and police start to converge on into Union Station to potentially address a threat. We still don't know that much information about if there are any casualties in this situation. They've moved media pretty far away from the scene right now. The most heavily taped off area is, again, like we had just mentioned, that near that intersection of Pershing and Kessler. So we're waiting to hear more. But once we hear that, we're expected to hear from the Kansas City Police media team very shortly here. So once we get information, we'll relay it back to you guys.
And Jacob, help us understand the connection or the timeline between the conclusion of the celebratory parade. The last that we checked in live, Patrick Mahomes was up with the Lombardi Trophy, and it was very jubilant. And the next time we check in, an hour or so later, there's what seems like a scene of chaos. So give us the sense of the timeline from when the event concluded and what you saw first that made you realize something was wrong. And I'm also just curious about the crush of people and how confusing that moment must have been for everyone.
Yeah, I would say the timeline was probably roughly 10 to 15 minutes as far as once the celebration was over. I mean, there was still a good amount of fans still around, and they were still trying to file out of the area. It's a very heavily crowded area, obviously a very large police scene here for a celebration that was supposed to be for the Kansas City Chiefs winning back-to-back Super Bowls. And then all of a sudden chaos started to break out. We see people running away from certain areas of where fans were. And you could see people were very shaken up. We've seen multiple people leave on stretchers in this situation. So it's a very chaotic scene, and right now it looks as though police are just trying to get more information from witnesses that saw what had happened. But yeah, a very chaotic scene, and on a day that was supposed to be a great celebration. And
Jacob, you're still there, I'm understanding. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
What is the posture of the police like now? We understand that the people who have largely cleared out of the area were shaken by it, but sometimes you can tell a lot from the demeanor of the law enforcement authorities that you still see there. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the police and their demeanor, I mean, they're very much on their toes right now. They're still very much spread out across the area, mostly around Union Station right now. They prepared for things like this. You can tell based on the way they were, of course, instructing people to move away from the scene, wanting to clear ways for medical teams to get through. And right now, they seem to be very prepared for a situation like this. Yeah.
And we understand, Jacob, that police have set up a reunification area for children, for parents who have been separated from their kids. And you also were able to record or shoot some footage yourself that we're able to show our viewers. Talk to me about the reunification efforts, if you see any folks getting back together, and what your footage shows us.
I did not see a lot of the reunification aspect of it, as I was still kind of being cleared away from the scene. Right now, we're just kind of huddled together with the rest of the local media here in Kansas City, just waiting to hear more information. But as I alluded to earlier, there was a lot of people shaken up by what they had seen earlier. And what started with, from my vantage point, what sounded like fireworks going off. Apparently, that wasn't what that was. And that's when everyone started to flee away from the scene near that intersection close to Union Station here.
And Jacob, this video that we're seeing that you shot, we see a lot of law enforcement officers running into a building. We see that there are some, looks like Kansas City fans alongside them. Where are they going? What can you tell us about what you witnessed with this?
Yeah, so they're going into Union Station, and from what we know, Union Station is where all this celebration had happened. That's where the Kansas City Chiefs players were, of course, on stage. They were to actually exit, I believe, into Union Station once the celebration was over. So the hope is that we can figure out why so many police and military personnel converged into that area, if there was a potential threat possibly, or if they just wanted to make sure that players and coaches and everyone involved with the team was safe once the celebration was over.
Well, it really speaks to how fluid the situation still is. And I wonder if those people running along with the police dressed in red with Kansas City shirts might be plainclothes police officers or undercover cops, which might also be a part of the posturing today of hundreds. Jacob, we appreciate you spending some time with us. I'm just wondering, throughout all of this, if it shook you in any way, and just how unnerving an experience this is for you and other people there today.
Yeah, well, this is a situation in my journalism career, reporting career, I've never had to deal with. And when you go to something like this, your assignment usually is to just, get reactions from fans and kind of set the scene with people just having fun and celebrating, the game of football that brings so many people together, and the fact that the Chiefs have been winning games. All of a sudden, everything kind of takes a left turn and you have to pivot. And for me, it's been a lot to take in. I've never had to deal with something like this before. But, I can only speak for myself. I'm sure there are a lot of people involved that aren't in my position, or the other fellow media members that I'm here with. For those people, I'm sure are very shaken by what has happened. I've seen a lot of reaction from people on social media saying, Kansas City's better than this. People just very disappointed at what has transpired today.
Yeah. Jacob, Michael, thank you so much for bringing us your firsthand account.
Thank you, Jacob.
We're going to go back over to Sam Vinograd. She's a CBS News contributor. She's a former assistant secretary for counterterrorism, threat prevention, and law enforcement policy for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Sam, are you learning anything from your contacts about whether or not this could be something that's related to terrorism, or this could be something that is, as you said, the other theory potentially is that this was an altercation between the two individuals that are currently being held by police as suspects? Are you learning anything more?
I haven't learned anything additional at this time, but I do understand that authorities at all levels of government, state, local, and federal, are working to ascertain the motivation of the individuals engaged in this altercation, and again, to ensure that there are no other individuals that could be involved in this that could inflict damage elsewhere, either on this scene or in other jurisdictions. And that's why there are various lines of effort underway. The individuals that are apprehended are being questioned by law enforcement. Ostensibly, any social media presence that they have is being reviewed to ensure that this is not related to targeted violence or terrorism, and again, to mitigate any reverberations elsewhere, while the immediate focus is ensuring that there is no additional loss of life. Now, a parade, a high-density event, is a vulnerable target. Law enforcement engages regularly in drills to ensure that any security risks are accounted for. There's training that's delivered to law enforcement personnel, first responders, and otherwise. They engage in scenario planning for exactly these kinds of events. And what we really have to figure out here as we proceed is, again, what the motivation was. If this was a personal dispute, it is a personal dispute with fatal repercussions on individuals that had no actual tie to the incident. But the FBI, state and local terrorism officials are going to be trying to rule out any other motivation here at this time. And I would imagine that the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force will be consulted as appropriate to ensure that there is not a terrorism nexus. While these individuals are questioned, their social media is scrubbed as appropriate, and they are questioned to see if they actually have a tie to the crime. We have not heard directly yet from local law enforcement, so we don't really know if the individuals that were apprehended were in fact directly involved in the shooting itself, if they're ruled out as subjects or otherwise. It's just too soon to tell, and that's why right now local law enforcement at all levels is trying to secure this location and get medical help to those that may have been impacted. I would imagine that at the federal level right now, the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Justice more generally are speaking with the White House, the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, an office that I work closely with, to really review what resources from across the federal government should be marshaled to send to Kansas City. There are a range of victim services that the federal government can provide in addition to any investigatory support that may be helpful as the situation is stabilized. But at this point, we cannot yet say that the situation is stable. We have to wait to hear from officials on the ground, to hear from them that the situation has been stabilized, that the individuals in question were the subjects, were the suspects in this altercation.
Sam, we appreciate that. I just want to update our viewers that the star quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, has sent out a message via his X account saying praying for Kansas City. And as you reference as well, there's so little official information that we have and that we have confirmed. We do know that 4 shooting victims are apparently at 2 hospitals, one of them in critical condition. But as we wait for answers for some of these key questions, Sam, I'm wondering about, if you know, you may not know, but the alcohol component for a celebration like this. It would make it unsafe, it would make it dangerous for fans, but it's a football Super Bowl party all day long. It's like a holiday in Kansas City. Do you know or have any sense of if part of the police posture may have been trying to limit alcohol consumption, if at all possible?
I don't know the answer to that, but we do know, unfortunately, that alcohol is not a necessary ingredient for personal altercations that turn ugly or acts of targeted violence and terrorism. So I would imagine that law enforcement's priority in a parade like this is to mitigate a loss of life rather than focusing purely on alcohol consumption.
All right, Sam Vinograd, thank you very much. We also want to thank Keith Taylor, Kathy Geider, and Jacob Michael. Thanks to you all.